What's up, compa Grillo? How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Senor Luis Chaparro. What's been happening up there on the Texas Chihuahua border?
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's pretty fucking hot, man. I wonder why you look so fresh all the time. Like I'm always, with a shitty tee and stuff. It's like well buttoned up and shit.
This shirt, I must admit, it's on its last legs. It's kind of ripped up, but it's my fave, and I wanted to give it a last bit of use before I had to throw it in the bin, in the trash.
Before we start, remember, guys, to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Luis Chaparro. Also, go ahead and subscribe to Ioan Grillo TV on his YouTube channel. And of course, where can we read your stuff, man?
So Crash Out Media, my medium is in full flow now. I've got stories, big reports coming out every single week. And I've also got it, if people, like my work, want to help out, it's all subscriptions are now available. You can chip in with a couple of dollars, couple of pounds, couple of pesos, and keep it all flowing.
Awesome, man. I mean, guys, for real, he's putting out some crazy fucking stories, good reporting on, and very timely as well. Like I saw you posted this morning this stuff from Ecuador, and that was like really in-depth reporting.
Yeah, big story. I mean, presidential candidate of Ecuador shot dead, a crowd, and he got 3 bullets in the head. So a professional shooter turned out to be news just come out now. Colombian. Now,
for a change.
Makes you think maybe former military, mercenaries, sharpshooters. But yeah, Ecuador's kicking off. It's like the shit that happened to Mexico. A few years ago, they used to talk about Colombianization of countries, and then originally, when I was first here, they were like saying, "Oh, the Colombianization of Mexico."
Yeah.
But then it became the Mexicanization of countries.
Yeah.
So now you're getting the Mexicanization of Ecuador right now,
dude. But I mean, Ecuador, it's literally passing from gangs, like street gangs, to fucking cartel, right?
Yeah. So
like that's the process they're going right now.
Yeah. I made a documentary there a few years ago, and it was just big old street gangs. And then it's just totally transformed now. They're moving all shitloads of cocaine through Ecuador to the Pacific coast, on boats through the Panama Canal, and they're providing the European market big time, which is booming. So there's like billions and billions of euros flowing back. So the Sinaloa cartel, Jalisco cartel are in the war there. However, we're not here right now to talk about Ecuador. We're here to talk about
something else, and equally interesting, man. I mean, but yeah, so go guys and subscribe and put some donations into crashoutmedia.com if you want to read some good shit. I mean, it's sort of free, but it will be cool to support Ioan's work. And today we have something also pretty fucking interesting, man. What is happening in Mexico City?
Yeah, so what I mean, there's 2 sides to this story we're talking about today. So really the headline of the story today is Mexico City has got a lower homicide rate, a lower murder rate than Portland, Oregon.
That's fucking nuts, man. I mean, it's a metropolis, right? It's one of the biggest metropolises in the world, and the crime has gone down so much. I asked you before we started recording. I asked you like if it was because it actually went down or because it was kind of like spiked up before.
Yeah. So it went down, and it's never been that high. But let's get into this. So Mexico City, okay, has got a lower murder rate than Portland, Oregon, than Dallas, Texas, than Houston, Texas, and definitely lower than Baltimore, Maryland, St. Louis, Missouri, and a bunch of these really violent cities. So let's get into some of these stats.
Yeah. What's the rate for Mexico City right now? What's the crime rate?
Yeah, so the murder rate, and we'll get into how these work. The murder rate right now, Mexico City is 8.9 murders per 100,000 residents in 2022. It's gone down 50% since 2018. So it's halved. It was about 18 per 100,000. Now it's 8.9. But also look, down the scale now. As a point of reference,
I'm watching the list of states in the U.S. and I'm seeing like places like Atlanta, 16.7.
Yeah,
dude, even Atlanta is way up than Mexico City.
Yeah. So Atlanta, Washington D.C. 17. Chicago, obviously everyone talks about Chicago, 24.
24. Las
right,
Vegas.
And then Detroit, 39, almost 40. Baltimore, New Orleans, 40. Baltimore, 51. St. Louis, 69.
69, dude.
Yeah. Okay, another catch there. We're not saying Mexico's all like love and peace.
Yeah.
We go into some of the bad places in Mexico. Ciudad Juarez, your neck of the woods, 103.
103, pretty fucking high. Like it's actually the top 5, top 3 in Mexico. I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. Mexico City's got around 100, so 103. So Mexico, Ciudad Juarez is more murderous than anywhere in the United States. Tijuana, 105. Celaya, Guanajuato, 109.
Dude, that's way up. That's way fucking up. But I mean, what happened really in Mexico City? I mean, can we praise like local politicians, the Secretario de Seguridad?
I think we can, but let's explain to some people if they're confused at all with these numbers and what they really mean, to break down what they really mean.
Yeah.
So this is kind of basic stuff, but if anyone doesn't know, you get these numbers by taking, counting all the murder bodies.
Mm-hmm.
All the killed corpses with bullets and stab wounds in a city in a year, and then dividing that by the population. So you have the number per 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the difference is that you'll still see like some of these places are very small. St. Louis is a pretty small place. So you only have a couple of hundred murders there, but it gets a very, very high rate. Mexico City's got a population of 8.9 million. So you've got a lot of people and the number of murders are divided. So sometimes, you can have, it's when you have a high murder rates in really big cities that it kind of has more impact. So you have to take that with a bit of a pinch of salt.
So basically what you're saying is like if we were to do a body count, there are still more bodies in Mexico City than in Baltimore. And but like the ratio is lower, right?
It's popular, but the ratio is very, very important. But also, like, say, for example, Chicago, if you take the bigger county that includes Chicago and some other of the metro area, that will have a higher body count than Mexico City and a higher rate as well. So if we get into, there's two stories here. There's kind of murders in the United States and murders in Mexico, and kind of comparing this thing.
Yeah.
So if we get into, Mexico City. So first of all, Mexico City has never had the crazy sky-high murder rates of Juarez, Tijuana, Michoacán, Guerrero, Tamaulipas.
Mm-hmm.
It's never had the crazy cartel fighting here.
So
now, I think
before that number went down, what was the number before?
Yeah, so it reached about 18. It's been the worst in recent years under the Mayor Mancera. And then it's been halved under the current mayor, Claudia Sheinbaum, and the current public security secretary, Omar Garcia Harfuch, who's an interesting character who survived an assassination attempt by the Jalisco New Generation cartel.
And who's a lot of not a lot, but some people say he's gonna be the next Genaro Garcia Luna. Let's see how that works.
He had a granddad in the military, involved in like Tlatelolco massacre. There's talk about him in Iguala stuff. He's a military guy, but he's a smart guy, and I do believe he's done work with reduced murders here in Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, talking about like why the cartels are not operating here in Mexico City, and the reason they're not operating, well, they are here. So people have back in the day, Mancera said, oh, we don't have cartels in Mexico City. It's not true they're not here, but they operate in a different way than they do in Sinaloa or in Michoacan or in Tamaulipas.
So they have presence, they have like criminal activities and are involved in a bunch of shit, but not necessarily driving in convoys and engaging in gunfights and that kind of shit.
Exactly, yeah. So like, you talk to some of these, these narcos that we talk to, and they might describe, they'll come down to Mexico City, they'll fly to Polanco, the big narcos, the major players, not little sicarios or but big major players.
Yeah,
they'll go to Polanco, they'll meet up in hotels with the major players to arrange deals, prices at the top high level of the game, of the cartel game, with police protection. But they're not fucking shit up on the streets and starting gunfights. So you see a lot of figures suddenly arrested here, and suddenly they're arrested from all the big cartels. But generally, they're not doing stuff. Now they talk about the idea of a pax mafiosi here, like an agreement between them that they're not going to really go at each other in Mexico City. I don't know how much that's kind of formal or informal, but that might be the case. They also have, sometimes, they want to keep houses, places, maybe send kids to some of the private schools here, have people going to the hospitals here, that kind of thing. So kind of using the city. But the big cartels are not warring here or controlling the territory in the same way. Now, you do have, and you've had a creation of kind of, which caused some disruption, some local cartels connected to big cartels. So you had La Unión del Tepito, a bunch of mobsters from the Tepito neighborhood. You had the Cartel de Tláhuac, like that down that side. The Marines went and took that guy out. So you had a few little things, but generally they're not doing things the same way.
Yeah.
Even though the code.
I'm sorry, and also we've seen like a couple of months ago, they probably more than a couple of months ago, they arrested these guys that had badges of El Ratón, right? Allegedly, Ovidio Guzman. It was like kind of like police golden badges that had a mouse on them. That was like very widely like commented in the press, like, wow, El Ratón and the Cartel de Sinaloa, Los Chapitos have strong presence in Mexico City. And also another thing that was pretty big to show like that how they operate in Mexico City, although it was a bit unusual, was the hit of Garcia Harfuch, right? It was in a nice neighborhood. It was a the highest top officer in Mexico City, and it was a hit right on the street, right?
Yeah, look, nowhere in Mexico is outside of these cartels' territory, and they can carry out a hit anywhere. They did kill back in 2008. They murdered the acting head of the federal police in his home in Mexico City, and he opened the door to his house, and the gunman was there inside his house and shot him. These guys are serious. You're in Mexico, you can be a target for these guys. They went for Garcia Harfuch in Mexico City. There'll be suddenly stuff will happen here. There was a house with a bunch of with like 40 bodies, a house in Tepito with like a bunch of Santa Muerte stuff and like a bunch of corpses. So there'll be some kind of crazy stuff here. It's not totally outside, but it's a big city, and still, really most people, are living in Mexico City. They are not living, seeing that gangster stuff around. Most people are living removed from that. You go to the walk around the Condesa, and you're going to walk into a Starbucks and see hipsters, with lattes and models walking around and stuff. It's a world away from being in Culiacan, from being in Uruapan, Michoacan. It's a very, very different world here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think happened like to lower the murder rate? Because it's not something to, it's like not 10%, 15% down that could have like natural factors of self-extermination of cartels, that kind of stuff. This is like over 50% down, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so like you had when Garcia Harfuch and Claudia Sheinbaum came in, So one thing you have one massive police force in Mexico City as well. Like in the rest of Mexico, you've got like, in Chihuahua, you've got the Chihuahua State Police, but then you've got like a municipal police of like, like Casas Grandes, municipal police of Cuauhtemoc, and all these like really fucking suspect municipal police forces, right? Right. In Mexico City, you got one big state police force of like, one of the biggest. It's like 80,000 officers, one of the biggest police forces in Latin America. So you got that, and then you had a lot of very directed action. Now there will be some people right away be saying, "Oh, don't believe the Mexico City numbers. They're made up. They just, they just, disfrazado los números. They made up the figures." But I kind of think it's hard to show these are totally false, because one thing is you have different numbers. You've got the police numbers, but also have the numbers in the morgue, and right now they're showing up. The second thing, like if there was a bunch of disappeared bodies instead, like loads. I mean, I'm sure there are some disappeared people. I mean, there are for a fact disappeared people in Mexico City. But if it was like massive numbers, like you saw in Tamaulipas, there'd be much more like demonstrations and people out there saying we've got thousands of disappeared people in Mexico City, and that's not the case right now. And the perception people generally have is that things have got better.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what's the perception on the street? How do you? I mean, other than the bubble of probably Condesa, Roma, and Polanco, like in the other neighborhoods of Mexico City, is the perception like better than it was with the last administration, or do you think the perception hasn't?
I mean, even in Iztapalapa, there was a documentary that came out just now about Iztapalapa, and there's a slight revival there as well. So even in some of I mean, like anything, you have poor neighborhoods. Murder's only one number. It doesn't mean, you've got other crimes as well. You've got people being mugged. You've got fighting. You've got stabbings. You've got houses being robbed. You've got stuff happening. But still, generally, this is more comparable to the kind of problems you have in a kind of mid-level US city.
Yeah.
Or even, if you go to England and you go to Manchester, you go to Liverpool, you're going to find violence. You're going to find people getting stabbed and fights and this kind of stuff. But it's it's a world away from from the nightmare kind of stuff we're used to. So one thing they did was they put up shitloads of cameras. There's they had this idea of making it the most camera laden city in Latin America, and they've got like massive C4 system with all these cameras looking in, and they're reacting to those. They're gonna see stuff, they'll react. So they got 80,000 cops.
I want to make a parenthesis that like right there, Marcelo Ebrard proposed these something like a walking identification system, right? Like he did you see that? Like the whole fucking idea of identifying criminals by the way they walk and having like cameras everywhere. What is that shit?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people get a bit carried away with technology, and you don't necessarily want like cameras, like walk around and some camera recognizes your face, and they see your face and they think they've got like some like major sicario, and then the next thing you've got the weaponized drone like shooting at you or something. Your face contours like they hook up as well with like some other like some guy but anyway they've got a lot of cameras, they're using them, they're reducing crime that way, or the murders, but also they're basically doing what the US did to reduce violence in the 90s, when the US had a lot of violent cities, and let's get into the US in a second, US violence in cities. But it was basically you have policing targeting high crime neighborhoods. Now in the US, this gets into the racial divide. In Mexico City, it's not a racial divide. It just means going. So I went down to Tepito, to where it was the headquarters of the Ioan, where there've been a lot of bodies. So you look at the numbers. Okay, in this sector, that's where loads of the murders are happening.
Yeah.
So we pile police into this sector. So I went down. It was like occupation. It was just like police everywhere, and these guys are not shooting out because they're like they're pushing. Now could Garcia Harfuch, could the police here have deals with certain crews? maybe.
That's what I was, because I mean, a lower number of murders, I mean, generally in Mexico or in Latin America, should mean also lower numbers in terms of corruption. Means like corruption is coming down, or should be coming down, if the numbers are real and organic. And also the levels of impunity, right? Like the levels of cases opened and justice served should be coming up if the numbers are to last,
Well, look, I mean, compare these numbers, right? Okay, the worst state of the numbers is Guerrero. In Guerrero, for every 100 murders, you have 2 people who get sentenced. So basically, you got a 2% chance, a 1 in 50 chance. You go and murder someone, you got a 1 in 50 chance of going to prison. Now, it's really more than a 1 in 50 chance, because they often get the wrong people in prison. So you have now in Mexico City, the numbers, if you look right now the murders are coming down, so they've pushed it hard, but it's like 50% the number of people. So it's like way, again, they're locking people up for these murders.
People
up. Now again, will it be sustained? There's everyone's going to have a yes but to this. But I do believe, with my investigation in this, that it is a positive story, and this can't be easily replicated in Ciudad Juarez. It's a different game. You're not in Ciudad Juarez. You're dealing with the Barra Azteca and the Mexicles and all this craziness there. It's a different game there, but it is a relative success story.
But do you think like it would outlast another administration? Like once Claudia Sheinbaum and Harfush go out of the administration, do you think this will actually last, or it's very temporary?
It can do, but I think with this murder stuff, you have to keep on working at it. It's not taken for granted. You've got to keep working to keep it down, keep prosecuting, going after murderers. It's not going to take care of itself. But anyway, let's talk about some United States side stuff. So I picked Portland, Oregon, because Portland, Oregon, people think of that as being like totally safe. People think about Portland, Oregon as being just like whatever, people eating muesli and hippie smoking weed or whatever. But that saw a spike in violence. Now there is sort of kind of some gang stuff there that happens, and also you have this issue in the United States that now there's been an increase in the last couple of years in U.S. murder. It went up specifically in 2020, 21, 22, and it's come down a little bit now this year. Now, get the big picture here. If we go back to the US to like the 1980s, the real peak of murders in the United States, then it was the really big cities had crazy murder rates. So you had thousands of murders every year in New York. Everyone talked about New York back in the 80s, 90s. New York, the Bronx, New York, crazy place. Don't want to go there, you get shot. LA used to be like, gangs, go to LA, like you have these British journalists, go to LA, there's 100,000 gang members, it's terrifying. And the big cities in the US are still fairly low murder rates. The big, except Chicago, but LA and New York are still fairly low in the murder rates. And people talked about New York being like bad, kind of back. And I was in New York in last time in January, the Garcia Luna trial. New York, I still think is Disneyland. New York is really not bad.
No, definitely. Chicago is it's another story, but I think it has a very different dynamic than the other cities in the rest of the US, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we get to the bad murder rates happening in the United States. And I do say that in the US, whereas in Mexico you get really violent states, and in Latin America violent countries, Honduras, Venezuela. In the US, it tends to be violent neighborhoods, really. Certain neighborhoods that are really murderous. But let's get to Baltimore, Maryland, where I've done more on the ground investigation, research, and yeah, I mean, the murder rate in Baltimore is like 50, 51. Yeah, so that's a high level. That's higher than a lot of Mexican cities. So that looks like a lot of crews shooting each other. It's kind of low level organized crime, kind of low level gang stuff.
Yeah, so it's like dealers basically shooting each other.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people getting shot as well, they're young. I mean, teenagers. A lot of been out there shooting, but like, I mean, I like Baltimore a lot. I enjoyed it. I kind of do think it feels a bit like going to the US back in the 80s or 90s or something. It's got that kind of bit of an old school kind of retro feel to it. But it's, yeah, I mean, like they're like a big retail market for selling heroin, selling. So people come from the states, come from Virginia and these counters and stuff, and they come there to buy bags of heroin, buy bags of drugs. It's kind of known as a big retail market, and people fight over those street corners. I do think it's crazy seeing those open air drug markets in the United States. Have you seen those?
Yeah. Like, yes.
Don't think it's crazy in a way when you come from kind of Mexico and you see the drug war and the military and stuff and all this kind of fighting, and then you go there and there's like an open air drug market.
Yeah, like people selling out on the streets and pretty openly.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's kind of like you send to heroin, you could be in Mexico, and I'm with the military and they're fighting drug cartels, and then you go to the US and they sit on the street selling heroin. So it's kind of it kind of makes this kind of fight.
Absolutely, and also like to add to that, I think there's a lot of and this is probably a whole fucking episode, but there's a lot of like self-regulating drug market in the US. I mean, and I think that includes shootouts from gangs and shit. Something that doesn't really happen in Mexico. The drug market doesn't really auto-regulate here. It needs like an output from security forces, from bigger criminal organizations, from the US even, from politicians, from that kind of stuff. And in the US, kind of like, I mean, it's hard. It's very difficult to see one gang getting a lot of power, getting like a monopoly of, like the drug business. Or
yeah, I guess you get some dynamics in Baltimore, which is the same as you see in Juarez, in that you get some of these times big dealers, powerful. There is powerful, real organized crime, some significant traffickers who are like moving drugs, and then they send it to all these small crews, but crews of like 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, 25 people. And then they're fighting each other over the corners, but they're all buying the drugs from the same people.
Yeah, exactly.
So you see that same stuff in Juarez right now, with these different little crews of gangs selling drugs and fighting, but they're both maybe selling, from the same cartel, whatever,
from the same stuff,
selling the source. So that's it. That's it with the kind of amazing contrasts. It makes you think twice that it's not all, it's complicated. And a lot of Americans living here in Mexico City, coming to live here because it's it's cheaper, it's a better lifestyle. A lot of which causes certain resentment sometimes from people about the prices going up, saying they're keeping their property higher price in dollars for the gringos, but it's a changing landscape, man.
Let's try to go and hit the last question here in the last 2 minutes we have before we go on a commercial. And if we go on a commercial break, otherwise let's just go straight to it. The question isn't too complicated. It's a good question. It's nothing super crazy. Here it goes. The question was shot by Kevin Housekeeper Holland 1304. So Mr. Kevin Housekeeper Holland wants to know, what do you think about Trump's recent comments about the cartels? I don't know if you could refresh your memories of what Trump said regarding
cartels. I looked it up. So he talks about like a military takeout of the cartels. He's kind of running with his rhetoric. He's been going to kind of Dan Crenshaw. Let's take out the cartels with the U.S. military. So quickly, we got 1:40 left. So I'll get into this real short. Look, it feels nice, and I can see why people want to, like this rhetoric. They feel the U.S. is powerful. It has a powerful military. So why is the U.S. In a way getting its ass kicked by a bunch of cartels? How are they able to sell all the fentanyl? How's there 110,000 people dying? I can see the temptation of it. The thing is, it doesn't work because you got like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people involved in organized crime here in Mexico. You go in there with the military and take out a few, it's still going to keep going. And that demand for fentanyl keeps going there. I mean, you keep pushing it. They just bring it straight into the US. I think it's not, you can't blow this away with a rocket.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It's more complicated than just shooting a fucking rocket in Culiacan or some shit like that.
But thanks much for the question, brother, and stay in touch. And big shout out. Check out Lewis's channel. You better be subscribing to Luis Chaparro's channel and to mine, Ioan Grillo TV. Check out Crash Out Media. Free love is good.
And
money
yes,
is even better.
Absolutely. So guys, this was a cool short episode. We're about to be cut off by our sponsors here, and yeah, no more shout outs. We did enough shout outs at the beginning and shit. So let's watch these. Let's get back to this channel next week.